Welcome to The Wing, the emotional and financial health check you never knew you needed.
Hello, ladies. Welcome to another episode of The Wing. Today, we are tuning in with Danielle Frank all the way from California, one of my favorite places in the world. So I'll introduce Danielle and then we'll get into a conversation. So after launching her career in Hollywood publicity at Miramax International, Danielle traded red carpets for red wine and entered into the world of wine and spirits, where she has spent more than 2 decades building iconic luxury brands. A firm believer that life's most rewarding opportunities often come from unexpected turns, Danielle has built a career defined by bold pivots in career and relationships and by embracing reinvention. She loves shining a light on the power of saying yes to life's next chapter. In 2025, Danielle added author to her resume with the release of A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting, a humorous look at family life inspired by her experiences as a devoted aunt and keen observer of everyday chaos. Drawing on a career that spans entertainment, luxury hospitality, and publishing, she brings wit, warmth, and a distinctive perspective to everything she does, always encouraging others to embrace life's pivots, savor the moment, and find humor in the journey. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me on your fabulous podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Danielle and I were connected by email, and when I read through what Danielle was up to, I just thought we need to talk to this lady and learn more about her career and her book. So we're going to have a really nice, candid, organic chat today and learn more about Danielle and her career and the book, of course. So we will hear a little bit about that too. So to kick us off, Danielle, you've had a few career pivots from Hollywood to building iconic luxury brands to becoming an author. Was there one moment where you realized your life wasn't going to follow a traditional path?
You know, I think my entire life beyond just the career pivots really sort of shaped that new story for me of realizing that, the life I was embarking on is looking different than the quote unquote expected checklist or what I thought was going to be, my story. Even before the first career pivot, I was living in New York. I was working at Miramax Films and I'm from New York. I've always had a fascination with California. I've loved it, but I guess I didn't think too seriously that I'd ever move there. And yeah, here I was, advancing at Miramax Films, worked my way up from an assistant to VP, running the department and living in New York. And towards the end of my 20s and, back then, particularly the pressure was, oh, you get married by 30, have kids by this age. And then, the woman stays home and, doesn't have as big a career as women do now. And, that was my first eye-opening experience because all my friends were sort of coupling up. And I was just like, wait a second, I'm not ready for this quite yet. I was traveling all the time with Miramax. I did international PR, so I got to travel internationally. And that opened my eyes up to, wow, there's so much of this world I want to see. And there's, I'm not ready yet. And I used to travel to California all the time for work, and my love for California just grew and grew. And so all that kind of came together as my first big pivot to be like, wait, you know what? I have plenty of time to get married and have kids. Let's just do it. Let's leave this cush job at Miramax. Let's pack my bags, bought a car, and moved out to LA. I was still working in the industry at a PR agency. And yeah, it's just that. So the moving from New York to LA was really the first kind of big pivot and telling me, hey, life doesn't necessarily have to go according to your quote unquote, checklist plan or, what you thought. Like, take a ride on this, journey we call life and see where it takes you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so inspiring to hear that. And your observation, I think, it's a global thing, right? Having that, coming into your early 20s and in through mid 20s, and people are coupling up and the pressure to get married and have kids and settle down. But there's so many situations where, your career was obviously absolutely taking off and you were curious about different parts of the world, and travel was something that appealed to you, and having that lifestyle change was something that was a priority at the time. So I think that that's certainly something that's relatable, and definitely something that I think a lot of our listeners would be able to understand or resonate with. And certainly I can in, that phase of my life as well. So thank you for sharing that, Danielle. You've reinvented yourself multiple times. So what's the biggest misconception women have about starting over, in your opinion?
Misconception is that you can't do it. I think everything that happens in your life is a chapter in the storybook of your life. It's the key is extracting the lessons and, learning from each of the chapters to propel you into the next chapter. I think just, the misconception that you can't try it out. You can't start over. I know it's daunting. Of course it is. Of course it's scary to try something new, but confidence doesn't come from never failing. It comes from knowing you can stand back up and choose again and knowing you can do it. And, sometimes that's just one little win, right? I mean, when I moved out to LA, as I said, at first I worked still in the entertainment industry. I worked for a PR firm. I loved working for a studio for Miramax, and I knew personal PR wasn't for me. No disrespect for personal publicists, but that's not my journey. I kind of knew it, but I just wanted to get to LA. And when I got there, the agency that I worked with, on top of it, was a very toxic environment. I quit without having another job, which is very unlike me. I'm very type A. And so that's when I segued. I just randomly I started over very elementary level. I took a big pay cut and started over in the wine and spirits industry, thinking it would be just a temporary thing until I figured out what it is I want to do when I grow up. But here I am 22 years later, still working in this industry. So, I think that when you take pivots in life, life transitions, it's listening to you, building up your armory to know that you can do it, over and over again. So my moving from New York to LA was the first in building up my confidence and knowing that whatever shift I make, I can do it and I can land on my own 2 feet. And, because even when I moved to LA, I just knew, like, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to New York. It's always there. So same thing. I think, women, change is scary, but you're not going to know unless you try. And, you're not going to stay in that, that uncomfortable middle for long. You're going to cross over that bridge and find out whether that's your new path or it's not the path you're meant to be on. And, you have to head on a different journey, but you're not going to know until you try.
Something really key there, Danielle, is that, confidence isn't built out of, not failing. I think some of the main pivots I can relate to in my life, like I've worked for 3 startups. And the first one I was made redundant in the first 6 months. The second one I sold most of my business to, and then that kind of went in various different directions. The last one, I was made redundant after nearly 4 years, and they went into liquidation. And I think every time I'm like, now I'm looking at it, I'm like, why do I keep doing this? But I keep doing it because of, like, each time I build a little bit of confidence on the situation, and it that gets better and better every situation that goes on. But you're right. I think, being able to feel comfortable in the change or in any kind of failure and not viewing it as failure, it can be such a negative word, but I think if having a failure is something that's only going to propel you forward and kind of force you to make change at different times in your life. So I think you captured that quite well in terms of just, not thinking that we can start over or feeling stuck. I want to get into that a little bit more as well, Danielle. So many, and I've spoken from myself, from my own perspective, but I know that many women feel stuck in careers or relationships. What's something that you've learned about knowing when it's time to pivot or reinvent yourself?
Yeah, I mean, and to add to what you were saying before, I do want to say, you never like to say failure. And I like to look at it as transition, right? As everything's a transition. Every transition gives you information. And what matters is what you do with it and how you take it. And that goes with being stuck in jobs or relationships. And, as I said, that when I worked at that PR firm in LA, I was only there 3 months. And I remember just the first day I showed up, there were like 3 of the publicists in their office crying. And I was like, what did I get myself into? And in the 3 short months I was there, I can't tell you how many mornings I woke up with that that pit in my stomach,
Mm.
that ulcer-inducing pit of just, oh, I don't want to go into work. And, in my 6+ years at Miramax Films, yeah, I was living in New York City in my 20s. Sure. Did I go out the night before and maybe didn't want to, maybe did I wake up and like, oh, I don't want to go to work. But there was never one day that I had that ulcer feeling of like anxiety of not wanting to go into work. But at this PR agency, there were many, many mornings that I had that feeling. And that was the biggest lesson for me. And that was a big takeaway for me. Like when it's affecting your personal well-being and that, when the job or the relationship or the friendship isn't serving you anymore, it's time to make a change because, I realized in that case, like, we have one life to live and, I want to do with it what I can. And we spend half of our lives at work. And, of course, do I wish I was a trust fund baby? Yeah, maybe. But, you have to enjoy work in some capacity, right? You have to enjoy where you're going, 50% of your lives. And, I realized my health and my personal satisfaction with where I'm spending half my life, that's important for me. And I realized that the job wasn't serving me. And that's why I left and quit without having another job, which I said is very unlike me. And then the same came true, when I was later on in a relationship and I was engaged to be married and, thought I was on that path to, finally having the path that I had outlined for myself of being, being married and being a mom. But I started to realize how lonely I was in the relationship. And it was a terrible feeling. And so, those receptors in my brain sort of went off, like the feelings that I had when I was at work. It's like, this is not how it should be. If I'm embarking on a marriage that hopefully you want it to last, for the rest of your life, then this isn't the way to start. And I've just learned to listen to that instinct that my personal happiness and wellness is better than staying in something that doesn't make me happy or brings me joy.
You and I have that in common. I know a lot of my listeners know this about me because they were there for the journey. But same as you. So I was engaged as well in my early to mid 20s and that didn't go ahead. Obviously, then that was a big life pivot for me as well. I know exactly what that feels like, and it is probably still one of the most scary things that I'd experienced. And being so young, and you're not sure, and then you are sure, and then you're trying to listen to your gut, and it's really difficult to, and just trying to navigate that whole situation can be very overwhelming. But again, knowing when to make that change, and knowing when you are feeling stuck, whether it be career or relationship, whatever the phase in your life might be, not understanding that, there is always a way out and there is always a way forward. And I kept saying to myself, maybe someone said it to me, but sometimes you have to go backwards before you go forwards. And sometimes things get worse before they get better. But if you can understand that and then try and ride that wave so that you're not stuck forever. No one's going to be stuck forever in anything, but it's sometimes, it's up to you how long that might take to navigate a certain situation.
Yeah. And I think it's also, as you said that, especially you were young, those first big changes, those first big decisions, that you make to uproot or change your life, they can be scary, but all it takes is sometimes that first one. Like for me, it was, moving from New York to LA. And then the second one was, shifting careers. And then, each one, like I said, gives you built up your armory to give you the confidence to know, like, I managed those and I did just fine. And, when I broke off the engagement, it set parameters for me of what I will and won't accept moving forward. Right. And so when I did get in a relationship years later, it was a great relationship, but there were things that weren't serving me then. And, his drinking had gotten a little out of control, and we worked on it for quite some time, but it just got to the point where it wasn't changing. But because of what I went through with my engagement and knowing I was fine and I was happier. I was happier for it because I got out of it. That then gave me the confidence when it wasn't working in my next relationship. And it gives me the confidence moving forward with everything that, if it's not serving me, I'm fine on my own and I'm going to be okay. And I don't need to stay stuck in something. But like I said, you don't stay stuck on that bridge forever, but each lesson gives you information that's going to tell your brain left foot in front of the right foot, in front of the left foot, in front of the right foot, so that you could eventually cross over that bridge and continue to cross over each bridge that you face.
That's it. And you did the hard thing. I feel the same. I did the hard thing. And when you do the hard thing, you realize that you build a lot of resilience, you build confidence, and you know that, okay, well, now, you're a lot more aware, like you said, moving forward, what you're willing to accept and not accept. And I love that. What was serving you or what was not serving you. I think that's really key. It's something I need to remind myself of all the time. What is that serving me, and be able to reevaluate where you're up to now, again, whether that is professionally or personally, and have confidence in it. And that's the thing, you're not going to be stuck on that bridge forever, but at the time it can certainly feel that way. So I think that's really, it's nice to hear that from your perspective, Danielle, that it's doing the hard thing is only what's going to help us have confidence in making change in the future, and spotting red flags or anything before we get to them. Danielle, what advice would you give to women who feel stuck in the wrong chapter of life?
I think the advice is to really look internally, right? And, really, at least for me, that's what's worked. I really do some internal assessment, not looking at, I guess the best way to explain this is like with my ex-fiance that I broke off with, right? There was lots of issues. The main one being that he didn't want more kids. He has kids from his first marriage. And he said he would. And then we got engaged, and it became very apparent quickly that he really didn't want more kids. I just realized, I want to be with somebody that wants to have a kid with me. And again, there were other things as well. But when I broke up with him, I remember my mom and my sister were like, screw him. Why didn't he tell you he didn't want kids? And I just, I said to them, I really have no animosity. He pretty much did. I probably just chose not to see it, along the way on the 6+ years that we were together. It's really, instead of blaming, him or the things around him, I really just use that time to look internally at me and what I want for myself. And again, it's just taking some onus on it, so anybody that feels stuck, whether it's in a bad relationship or in a bad career, if you're feeling stuck, look internally as like, why do you feel stuck? Why do you not feel the confidence to move on? Because it's not the job's fault always. It's not always, sometimes it is the guy's fault or the partner's fault, but whatever their fault is, it's your fault for putting up with it. It's your fault for staying in it. So, it's really looking internally on how you can get unstuck, how you can do what's best for you. And, that's what's worked for me, is not looking at the blame outside, but looking at how I can empower and change it from the inside.
I love that. I'm a big fan of self-improvement and self-reflection. I think that is absolutely key. We can't control how other people react to us, or we can't be responsible for other people's emotions or actions, but we can control how we respond or react to certain situations and different people at different times of our lives. So yes, I think that is certainly something that I would echo as well. Danielle, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so your book, now it's called A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. So I'm very keen to hear more about this, Danielle. So firstly, so you mentioned you're an aunt. So you obviously, and you've openly said that this is from an observer perspective, but I will let you have a chat to us about the book. But firstly, what's the funniest parenting moment that you've observed that made you think this has to go in the book?
Well, the first chapter is, I don't know if it's the funniest parenting moment, but it's the inspiration to how this all got started. I actually wrote this 14 years ago. So it's a combination of, I had just broken off my engagement. Probably it's been longer now. And, realizing that the path of motherhood might not happen for me, but I still want a seat at the table to how kids are being raised to be good human beings, especially as they're, growing up to be, running our society and leaders of, the nation. I think it starts at a very young age to, ensuring that kids have good behavior. So I was watching my niece and nephew, and this is how chapter 1 came about, is they were young at the time, now they're adults. And while they were great kids, of course, every kid has the propensity to whine. And I was like, Aunt Danielle drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. And so all the pieces of the puzzle started to come together. Obviously working in the wine industry, I love wine. I love the storytelling. I love the idea of making wine knowledge accessible. And I just thought there was some fun, I started to think about it as there's really some fun parallels to human behavior and wine terminology, because at the end of the day, everything in this book, I'm not claiming to be, a licensed, parenting expert or anything. It's just a tongue-in-cheek book equating wine terminology to, like I said, basic human behavior. And you don't need to be a parent to know good human decency, right? About manners and not being a bully. But yeah, all my experience, as an aunt, I was a bonus mom to my ex's kids for many years. And as I said, I'm Aunt Danielle to many of my friends' kids. So, it just became an homage to all the parents out there that I see and all the new parents that are out there. It's just a fun way to, a fun reminder of getting in early on the ground floor on making sure your kids are raised to be good human beings, because as I said, they're going to be running the nation soon. And it's now more important than ever to have, empathy and kindness and not be a bully. Take it from us here in the States. We have a leader who doesn't exhibit those things. So, it's my way of contributing to, as I said, the future generations of hopefully having an impact on how kids are raised well.
I love that. Having a seat at the table and being able to, because you have influence. It is about the village. It's about all of the people that interact in children's lives that shape the people that they become. And I think the fact that you are so hands-on and genuinely interested and clearly involved in obviously your niece and nephew's life, but then all of your friends and their kids, I think that is a real testament to you. And it is, it's nice to look at it through that lens. So, I have 3 kids and they're all under the age of 3 and a bit. And I can absolutely relate to the whining, to the whining at the table in 2 ways. So conscious of it, right? So, but it's so nice to hear the perspective of you're not just the observer, obviously you're a family, but that your perspective and outlook on that, in that, no, you are as impactful as anybody else in the kids' lives, because yes, there's the parents and yes, there's the schools and, all of the other things, but we're all in it together. So having that want and that, I guess, taking responsibility for your seat at the table in, how you can actually influence or help the kids and help shape them and bring that into a tongue-in-cheek, relatable kind of book, I think is really cool. Danielle, maybe you could read us a little snapshot from the book to give our listeners a bit more of an idea on the tone and what you've spun up there.
Thank you. I would love to. So yeah, each chapter, as I said, is really short. It's written like a children's book. It's illustrated. It rhymes, but definitely not made for kids. Every time I use wine terminology, it gives the definition. At the back of the book, gives a basic understanding of how wine's made. So it's a great gift even for somebody that's just a wine lover. So lesson 3 is you don't want your kids to ferment. So in winemaking process, the fermentation process is when you turn sugar into alcohol. So we think sugar is something sweet. Alcohol can be harsh or biting. So you don't want your kid turning into someone that's sweet and too harsh and biting because they don't have manners. Manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day 1 before they start to crawl. You don't want your kid to be the sour grape in the bunch and turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude, because it's very off-putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole.
Okay, 2 things. Firstly, hilarious. Secondly, I see how that is not, it's not for children. It's very much for the parents.
I did have a colleague who showed it to her child who couldn't read, but they liked the illustrations. So that you can show your kids, but if they can read, don't give it to them.
I feel like I could actually do that as a bedtime story, but skipping out of a few parts, but because our kids obviously can't read just yet. So that's funny. And at least for a giggle from parents and anyone who has children in their lives, honestly, whether you're a parent or not, it doesn't matter. Kids they are themselves, no matter who they are in front of. Typically, they're very So thank you, Danielle. That's really cool. It's given me great perspective. Obviously, I did some research and like I kind of got to know you a little bit over email, like from your bio and things like that. But it's really cool to share that. I think that gives a really good insight on what the book is about, what you're about, how you're viewing things, and how maybe we can all just have a little laugh once in a while, because kids do all of those things that you mentioned. It's about how do you try and, weave it out of them if you can.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, parenting, as you know, is one of the hardest jobs in the world, right? So, this is like I said, my homage to parents out there to hopefully just insert a little laughter and humor through, what is the most difficult job out there.
Well, thank you, because I think that, being able to, one of my favorite sayings is if you don't laugh, you cry. And there's a lot of those moments. So even just hearing, I love that it rhymes too, because that's something that can really stick with you. And at least, we have to laugh through these things. So, and you've documented it in a book. So it's called A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. Is it available now, Danielle, or how yes.
It's available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. I don't know
Awesome.
if BarnesandNoble.com is international. I think it is. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm definitely going to get myself a copy and I'll read it to Jake so that he can laugh along with me. And I'm sure there are plenty of other parents out there who need to laugh through this parents and observers and other family members who are coming through this journey with us all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great for aunts, uncles, teachers, or anybody, that wants a good laugh, or even wine lovers as well.
Yes, absolutely. A glass of wine and a little and some light reading. I think that's nice. Danielle, I want to hear more about your, experiences off the back of your very decorated career journey. So you've worked with luxury brands for decades. What have those experiences taught you about people that surprised you?
I don't know if it surprised me so much, but what I've learned more and more throughout the process is storytelling, right? And romanticism, shepherding brands that have such history and evoke emotion, right? I work with some of the brands like Veuve Clicquot, for example, champagne. Not only there's so much history involved that is fascinating. I mean, Madame Clicquot was essentially the first female entrepreneur out there. Even weaving through the narrative of this brand is, the storytelling, the romanticism aspect of it. As I said, it's like, maybe this person remembers that they had this on their high school graduation, or maybe I shouldn't say high school in America. You can't drink unless you're 21. But, like their college graduation, or maybe they had a glass with, on their wedding anniversary, whatever it is. It's all about storytelling. I think that's what we as humans gravitate towards, is the romanticism of the storytelling, whatever it evokes out of us, right? It's, what I like might be different than what you like, but as long as it's evoking emotion out of me and bringing something out of me, whether it's a memory or a new experience or a new memory or creating a new memory. Yeah, it's, that's what we try to do with any brand. Is try and, build trust and build, some sort of story that resonates with customers.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned some, big name there. I'm sure I have a bottle of that sitting in my cellar, actually. That was gifted to me. But working with these luxury brands, like even, you think what is it's very fascinating to me with the background in marketing in particular. It's certainly not at that level, but what is their kind of, I guess, intention or what, and it all comes back to the storytelling and learning about and what emotions does that evoke. So I think that's certainly a very valuable takeaway.
Yeah, it's all about connectivity, right? So even not even just the brands you drink, but in any human interaction, and that's what it's taught me, right? Is build that connectivity through your writing, through your communication when you're talking to your friends. It's It's all about connectivity. That's how, we humans best interact with each other.
Danielle, what did working with luxury brands teach you about success?
Well, to savor, savor the moments. I mean, especially when you get to experience these brands like Veuve Clicquot or Dom Perignon, and it feels like a special moment to be savored. And that's almost like, success, right? Whatever that success is for you, whether that's in your career, whatever that's in your relationship, it's to savor that moment. You never know when it's gone. My dad taught me that at a young age when he was very successful and he made some bad decisions and lost, a lot of his money early on. And I'll never forget, he said, let this be a lesson to you. You never know when it's all gone. So whatever your success is, whatever you deem as success, savor it, cherish it, remember that moment, and let it propel you forward so that you continue your success as well.
I love that. I haven't heard that before in terms of, just like sitting in the moment and appreciating the success. Like, I think success is something that's futuristic or something that we will eventually achieve, but there are a lot of successes that would be happening in everyday life for a lot of people that we might skip over a little bit or just think, okay, cool, that's done. It becomes more of a checklist item, but really trying to, sit in that moment and appreciate that success, again, professionally, personally, whatever it may be, to really, soak it in. And because you don't know, because these moments are fleeting. I really like that perspective. That's very, very wholesome.
Thank you.
Danielle, I can't wait to hear the answer to this question. So, you've done it all. Red carpet, wine cellar, or family dinner table. Which has the best stories?
Well, I mean, I definitely have some great stories from my time at Miramax, for sure. There were some great stories. I've definitely lived, it was at a time too when we didn't have cell phones with cameras, unfortunately. I don't know. I say unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. No, there were some beauties in there. But then again, I've created great stories working in this industry as well, in the wine and spirits industry. Yeah, it's continuing to build all the stories, but I definitely have a lot in my arsenal of my Miramax days, some wild stories. I mean, I can't tell too much, but it just even like walking into like a steel beam in front of Jude Law, I thought I had like blood dripping from my head. And he was like doing interviews on a phone because he just got nominated. And I was like the publicist on hand for Miramax. And while he was running these calls, and I thought I was being so funny, and I turned around, walked right into a steel beam, and he's like on a phone with the New York Times. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, trying not to cry. I probably shed some tears with my back turned. But there's wild stories of, traveling with talent, and I got to travel the world and go to the Cannes Film Festival in Venice. So there was a lot of fun to be had.
I can only imagine.
I create my fun but at the dinner table as well, and I create fun in the wine industry as well. So I can't complain.
It's so intriguing, isn't it? It's just like a different world from my perspective. It's something that's hilarious. Well, look, if you can save yourself from some embarrassment from running into a steel beam in front of Jude Law, then I think that's one way to build your confidence, because at the time it probably felt like, what could be more embarrassing than that? That's very funny. And again, it's all about the stories, right? Danielle, Hollywood or the wine industry, which is more dramatic?
I think the Hollywood's more dramatic. I mean, everything seems like so heightened and so serious, and I think that's part of why I left it, is like, it's like, we're not curing cancer here. I had a boss back at Miramax. I mean, great. I learned a lot from this boss, but I remember at the Cannes Film Festival, we had this luncheon that we did for our international distributors every year. We always tried to get the talent from the films that they were selling at the festival, at the film market. We tried to get the talent to come to this big lunch the Friday of the Cannes Film Festival. And as I moved up, became my sole responsibility to fill that lunch. And in the beginning, we used to fly talent there and pay for them. So a lot of people enjoyed like a trip to Cannes. But, as the years went on and budgets were cut, it was like, well, we're not flying people, so we need to like get people that are already at Cannes. They're there for other films. And anyway, long story short, my boss, I remember he always used to say the same thing about everything. I don't care what you have to do, make it happen. I mean, I was even doing a press tour. I was planning right before I left. I was planning a press tour for the Berlin Film Festival with some big A-list talent, and this one actress was going to be about like 11 months pregnant, and she didn't want to travel. And I heard that line again. I don't care what you have to do, make it happen. And so, yeah, it's like, we're not curing cancer here. Like, it's film, it's talent. There's a lot of inflated egos. So, yeah, I think it's way more dramatic in Hollywood. I mean, that's what Hollywood's based upon, right? Being dramatic, having that dramatic flair.
Well, exactly. That's what keeps us all entertained on the other side of the TV
Exactly.
screens. But working in it like you did would be a completely different experience. And again, like you said, you were able to kind of observe that while you were there. And then I'm sure a lot of the time after being there and realizing how much how much goes into it all behind the scenes and how many people are actually involved. And it's not just the faces that we see on our apps, but it was something that would be completely terrifying if you were to go into completely cold. But the fact that you did it, you saw it, been there, done that, and you can move on and, build your own success in other areas. So, and have a bit more of not relaxed, because I'm sure it's still pretty like high pressure at times working in the luxury brand industry, but you speak more softly about your experience there in terms of it being about the storytelling and listening, the emotion that you can evoke and kind of, that type of messaging, rather than what I think a lot of people would picture Hollywood to be like, or any of us that aren't there. So, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, Danielle, but what's the most iconic story and or person that you've met and why?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. And I actually didn't meet them when I worked at Miramax. I just met them a few weeks ago. I got to meet Harrison Ford. I don't know. For me, that's iconic and the most iconic. I mean, it's Indiana Jones, it's Han Solo, and he's just such a presence. And that was a big coup. One of my brands that I work with at my company now is Glenmorangie Scotch. And we've done a collaboration with Harrison Ford. He's been working as an ambassador, and then he created a blend with our master distiller, Dr. Bill. And so there was an event in Los Angeles that I got to go to, and he was there. And oh yeah, that's most people, I've met a ton of celebrities in my time at Miramax and living in LA. And I always say, I don't get starstruck. They're human beings just like you and I. Like, that doesn't make them better than any of us. But that one, definitely starstruck, because he's, obviously, as I said, Indiana Jones, Han Solo, but he's also just everything you hear about him. He's a good person. He was so charismatic and just commanded the room and was so funny and had such charm. Yeah, that was a treat.
I love that. That's a good one. And yeah, absolutely iconic. And that's right. They are people just like you and I, but it's just that the world sees more of them than they see of us. So
exactly.
There's that concept of fame is very fascinating, isn't it?
It really is.
And it's nice that your Miramax career, like, or whilst that, you left there, but now you've gone for working for these luxury wine and spirits brands that kind of naturally lends itself to interacting with big talent like Harrison Ford and, I'm sure a multitude of others that you've come across during your time there as well. So that's very interesting. I love that. Danielle, finally, I want you to fill in the blank. So life is too short to
be unhappy, to be unhappy. Like I said, I just try and live my life to the fullest. I try and live my life with the credo that we have one life to live. I'm going to do with it whatever I can, obviously within legal limits. But that's why if the job isn't serving you, if the career, if the relationship, the friendship, if it's making you unhappy, then change. Do what you can to, give your life fulfillment and bring you happiness, because it's, in the end of the day, it's really a short life. And, of course, you can't be happy all the time, but I'm going to try and do everything I can to make it as fulfilling as possible.
Yeah, it's simple and clear, but you're right. Life is too short to be unhappy. And if you are in a situation where you might feel stuck or you might feel like you can't get out of it, or you're feeling limited, or you're feeling just generally unhappy, you know, there's things that you can do and change. And, you know, whether that's establishing different boundaries, or whether that's having different conversations, or surrounding yourself with different people, doesn't necessarily have to, you know, be nasty or awful in terms of leaving a stuck situation, but you know, being aware of the fact that, yeah, you can get out of things, and you can, you know, mold and change your life to take you to the next thing. And if you have your happiness at the forefront at all times, and listen to that gut feeling like Danielle spoke about before, and I can certainly relate to that, particularly in professionally and personally, I always, that pit in your stomach that makes you feel anxious or sad or not wanting to get up and do something. So I think, yeah, listening, pay attention to those thoughts and feelings, and then, you know, writing it down, put it in a journal, talk to a trusted friend or family member about it, stick your head in a book like Danielle's book to make yourself laugh, write some notes as you're going. You know, there's lots of different things, but hopefully in at least listening to a conversation like this, it was very candid on two opposite sides of the world. As most of you know, I'm in Canberra, Australia, and Danielle is in California, right near Santa Monica Beach. So, you know, for us to even be able to connect and have this conversation, I think is extreme. It's been very valuable for me personally, but it's really nice to share different perspectives, particularly from someone who has, like I said, had a very decorated career and worked with the, you know, with the high flyers and the A-listers, and now has put her commentary into words on paper in the form of a book. So yeah, very inspiring, very candid. So appreciate the chat.
Well, thank you for having me on. And as you said, yeah, I think that's why, you know, I love speaking on podcasts, but as a listener, that's why I love podcasts. Is this Instagram is a static post and everybody just posts everything so great. And I think that these podcasts, that's what people gravitate to. That's what I gravitate to, listening to podcasts, because it's organic conversations. People like you and me talking about real life and how we get through it. And that's how we get through it, is just, you know, being a village for each other, whether we know each other or not, people just listening on the other end, just to know it's everyday people going through these everyday things.
Yes, exactly. We're all human beings. We're all on this earth at the exact same moment in time. So yes, and it is nice to hear the different stories and make those connections. So yeah, thank you, Danielle. That was really lovely chat. So maybe you could tell our listeners where they can find you and the book. I know you mentioned it was on Amazon, but if you want to give us a bit of a wrap on how we can get our hands on the book and get more of you.
Yes, if you'd like to, as I said, get the book, it's on Amazon online and barnesandnoble.com as well. I can be found at daniellefrankauthor.com or on Instagram at Create a Great Story.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, you know where to find Danielle, ladies. So, and I will tag in the Instagram reel as well. So you can always refer to the Wing Instagram page too for more information. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you have any requests for any future guests or any questions, please let me know. But thank you very much for tuning in. And thanks again, Danielle, for joining us.
Thank you.